is Elizabeth Greniger. I'll be facilitating today's webinar. And joining us today we have Dr. Joyce Epstein, who's the Director of the Center on School, Family, and Community Partnerships and the National Network of Partnership Schools at Johns Hopkins University. In a moment, I'll give you a more formal introduction of Dr. Epstein, but before I do that, I'd like to take a few minutes to find out who all is in our audience today and where you all are located. In a moment, you'll see two poll boxes come up on your screen, and we'd like you to select the response that best fits. I know it's a busy time of year with many starting the new school year, and we really appreciate you taking the time out to be part of today's webinar. Looks like we have quite a diverse audience. I'm interested to find out who some of our others are. Hopefully we do have some parents in the audience who can lend their insights to the topic. And looking at where everyone is located, we have some diversity there. We are the RELA Mid-Atlantic, but we aim to serve the nation, and so we're happy to see that there's folks representing all the different areas of our country and a few from outside the country. That's very exciting. Okay, we're going to pull those polls off the screen so we can get into the main part of our webinar today. Before I turn it over to Dr. Epstein, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about her. Joyce Epstein holds a PhD in sociology from Johns Hopkins University, where she is currently director of the Center on School, Family, and Community Partnerships and the National Network of Partnership Schools. She's a principal research scientist and a research professor of education and sociology, also at Johns Hopkins. In 1995, she established the National Network of Partnership Schools, which provides professional development to enable school, district, and state leaders to develop research-based programs of family and community involvement. Dr. Epstein has over 100 publications on family and community involvement, including School, Family, and Community Partnerships, Your Handbook for Action, the 3rd edition, which guides partnership program development, and also a textbook for college courses for future teachers and administrators called School, Family, and Community Partnerships, Preparing Educators and Improving Schools. That's the 2nd edition. And among her recent awards, she was named a Fellow of the American Educational Research Association, AERA, in 2009, and she received the 2009 Elizabeth Cohen Award for Applied Research from AERA's Sociology and Education Specialist.
Was it a good one?
Her current research focuses on how district and school leadership affects the quality of school programs of family and community involvement and results for students. She is a very accomplished presenter, and we're really excited to have her here with us today to talk about all of the connections she's made between research, policy, and practice. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Joyce.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Hello to everybody. I'm really delighted to see so many folks joining us on this webinar today. It's very exciting to me, always at the start of a new school year. To me, the New Year's is September when the school year starts, but now schools start in August, and so we pushed it back a bit, but it's always an exciting time of the year. It's very relevant to be talking about school, family, and community partnerships today, and I'd like to see if I think we want to talk a little bit about what we have in mind for this webinar, and then we'll move on to some of the content to help you really understand the topic, the options, and the actions we hope you will take. So in this webinar, we really have 3 sections. One is to summarize some of the research on effective programs of family engagement and the results for student success. Then we're going to talk about 6 research-based principles that grew from our studies to improve both leadership at the school district, state, and organization levels, and school programs so that school-based programs can be effective and equitable. And then I'm going to ask you to reflect on the information to determine your next steps. I'm hoping that's a really active thinking process, because the good news is that you will see today that you really can take action on this topic, and that there are resources like our network that are here to help you. Our plan at the moment, or our mission at Johns Hopkins, at our Center on School, Family, and Community Partnership, is to grow leaders out there, and those leaders are you. So I'm hoping for your good questions and to see how we can help you really move from thinking this is a really important enough topic to spend some time with us today, and then to take action on it. So in a way, these 2 hours is step 1 in 100 steps, but there's help that will help you be successful as you move forward. So the first section of our webinar is about the research base, and I wanted to share with you a little history so you know there really is a strong research base behind the work we do in our studies and also in practice. We started to study this in a very basic way in 1981. Seems like a long time ago, or some days it seems like just yesterday. But we started with basic research to find out how we really understand and talk about this topic, to develop a really good theoretical model that we could use to improve our studies and our understanding. In 1987 to 1995, we really were deep into field studies to see if we really did understand this work and how family engagement can be successful in challenging communities rather than in the easiest places of all. And so our field studies in schools, districts, and states took several years. Researchers move very slowly sometimes. We have to really try to know what we're thinking about, and if we're going to help people, we really want it to be effective. By 1996, we thought, well, we've known something, and we started the national network to enable any school, any district, a state, and organizations that help districts, schools, and states to use the research base as a way to organize their own leadership and their own partnership programs. And since that time, since 1996, we really have a kind of an ongoing interacting model where research helps practice, but practice also challenges and directs our research, which is really a very important part of our work. We say research to practice, practice to research, because we can learn from all the different schools, districts, and states and organizations across the country. So this is a little history that we've been working at this a long time. You can see our national network is actually going into its 20th year in this fall, this year. So we're really excited about that anniversary. In the last school years, our active members were about 600 schools across the country and in a couple of other countries. We have good partners in Ireland and Scotland, and Chile, and elsewhere. We have 60 or more districts who've been working with us at the district level, a good number of organizations, and good section of state departments of education. Those of you who are here today from schools, districts, organizations, and state departments, you're invited to join us too. We'd like to help you move forward on this agenda as well. The organizations include university partners. I saw some university partners on the registration list, and so everyone attending today is going to find a home in the work we're going to talk about. In our coverage today, we're going to talk a little bit about things that you may or may not be familiar with it. So I'm guessing that everyone who registered today is very clear that family engagement is important, or you wouldn't be spending some time on this day with us. You probably have some good ideas about what goes into a good program, and it's quite likely that your own school district or state is already doing some very good things. So that is important, and what we really should be doing is really not a secret. The stressful part that people still struggle with is how to organize and sustain high quality, equitable, and effective partnership programs, and how to customize programs for diverse communities and families and schools so that it really is equitable, that all parents are involved regardless of their socioeconomic, linguistic, ethnic, racial, religious backgrounds. We want to be able to say our programs are effective and equitable. So we're going to be working on the how-to today, and I think that will show you this is feasible, it's doable, and we have so many good partners in our network right now that really are showing it's not only easy to do once it gets started, but it's really quite important for the families and for the students. So in the theoretical side of this, this is a popularized version of my theory that we use to guide the work that we do in our research and in practice. And we ask, how will we reach the goals that we know it's important to engage families? And so we say, well, we want excellent schools, we want strong families, and we want healthy communities. When we bring these spheres of influence together, then we find in our data that we have more successful students. Now, there are some people who are still out there who say, if the families would just do their job, then we, the schools, would do ours. But what we find in that picture, which is called separate spheres of influence, is that the students really feel sort of in the middle of not knowing where or whose messages are most important about their education. Instead, what we find in our data is that when we bring the spheres of influence together, then we have more students who succeed in school. So this is a popular version in our textbook for colleges or college courses, and even in our practical handbook, we go deeper into this theory of overlapping spheres of influence. But it's been tested many, many times and shown if we help schools, families, and communities work together, then more students succeed in school. Now, over the years, since 1981, there have been hundreds, literally maybe even 1,000 studies of merit done on family and community engagement, and what they produce in terms of results for students, families, and for the schools themselves. So these slides that I'm sharing with you here, I'm not going to read them to you because you will have a copy of the slides, but the first one says there have been many, many studies, literally hundreds, that show, depending on their, that they have good methods, that they show that family and community engagement produces for students academic outcomes, attendance, behavioral outcomes, even at the high school level, more credits earned and passed, and increased high school graduation. So regardless of grade level and regardless of student background or family background, there is ample research from many, many researchers, not just my group, but many, and in different countries as well, that show that there is an impact on student outcomes. The second slide in this series shows you that similarly, hundreds of studies show that families benefit too. Even though we say school, family, and community partnership programs are really about the students, that's a big emphasis that we make in our work, that it really does help parents as well, and that at all grade levels, the studies show that when parents are helped to be engaged by their children's schools, they show stronger support for the schools, their attitudes are more positive about the schools and their teachers, they have more confidence about helping their children at home, they make social ties with other parents to create a community of families at the school, and they feel they belong to the school belongs to them and to the community. So again, ample evidence, not just from my group, but several hundred now of researchers who study all aspects of family and community engagement in whatever university they happen to be in this and other countries. Third, the summary here is of impact on teachers and the schools. And we find over and again that when teachers are in schools that have high family engagement or that have excellent partnership programs, they reach out to more families in ways that are beneficial to the families but also to the teachers to understand that families have strengths regardless of their backgrounds and that they have very high aspirations. They have high goals for their children. Once you start to talk to them, the engagement activities really help teachers to be willing to try new and more effective engagement activities. So programs grow in quality over time, and we see in a recent MetLife study, the Survey of American Teachers has reproduced our early finding that teachers are more satisfied with their work and their profession in schools that have high engagement. So there is really ample evidence of effects on students, on teachers, and on parents themselves. So that's a very brief summary of some of the research that has been done by many scholars. And I'm going to turn this over to Elizabeth, who's going to ask you about where you're starting from today so we can build from there.
Thank you, Joyce. That was a nice overview of the research, and of which there is plenty. Before I jump into this next question, I want to address a few parking lot questions and some technical issues just so everyone is hearing and seeing what they need to see. For those who didn't know yet, there is a copy of the presentation in the resources to download box. You can download that and you'll have a copy of the slides. Folks are asking a little bit about resources. We are going to get into a lot of resources at the end. Some will be sprinkled throughout, but there are several slides at the end of the presentation where Joyce will talk about some resources that she would recommend. And Anne-Marie, I see your question about students with disabilities, and we're going to get to that. So I want to let you know that I see that. But at this point, what we would like to do is hear a little bit from you. We have a multiple choice question. We're interested in finding out if in your schools or in the schools where you work or supervise, how would you describe the current level of family engagement? You have the choices here: high, good, average, or low. And we're going to put that poll up on the screen for you to respond, and we'll have a look at where you all are. I think the great thing about today's presentation is that no matter where you are in the range of participation and your levels, you will find something interesting and useful to take back to your setting. And as Allison's asking over in the parking lot, would we be able to share some of the bright spots that districts are doing? You're going to hear a lot about some of the successful stories of the partners that Joyce is working with. So be ready for that. There's some really exciting stuff going on out there. So this is interesting. Very few on that high participation, and it gets to be quite a bit more down in the low and the average. So Joyce, how does that resonate with your experiences and what you see out in the field?
Well, those are typical starting points, and I think your comment, Elizabeth, was exactly correct. Wherever a site is starting from, even if they are in that teeny little excellent section, even the best of programs can improve and reach more and different families in more and better ways. I did see the parking lot question about students with disabilities. And when we say all families, we really mean all families, whether they have students with special needs, which could include gifted children as well as those with serious other disabilities. And so we're really talking about creating programs and improving them from one year to the next to increasingly engage families with their children in their schools at their grade levels in ways that are going to matter for the children. That's the point of all of this, and we'll get back to other questions later in the session. But this is pretty typical, and it's almost a little bit like a normal curve. And interestingly, in our network, we collect data every year from sites to say how are things going, and some people just started and others have worked with us for 10, 12, 14 years, and it comes out even looking a bit like this. It's almost a normal curve. Some people are just starting and haven't done very much. Others are really in the center of a big normal curve, and then others tail off and get better and better over time. So this is a good starting point.
Great. And one question that I do see in the parking lot about one of the terms used, Grace is asking about the goal-linked activities. And I know you're going to talk about that a little later in the presentation. So if we can hang tight, I think you'll learn a little bit about what Joyce refers to as goal-linked activities.
That's a big topic. Okay.
Great. Let's move it right along into the next section. We're going to pull that poll off the screen and into some of the research-based principles.
All right. So over the years, my colleagues and I have done many studies, and we pay attention to other people's studies to summarize and do literature reviews and all kinds of things that help us understand the field as a whole. From all of that work, in 2006, I think it was, we stepped back to ask, what have we learned over the years about all of this work, and what does that mean for practice? What does it mean for policy? So one thing that we can say for sure is that what we learned over the years is there was an old way of thinking about parent involvement and a new way of thinking and organizing effective policies, programs, and practices of partnership, school, family, and community partnership. So more focused leadership, responsive professional development, ongoing technical assistance, all are needed to build partnership programs in a new way. What this means is we're not really talking about an event. We're not talking about one activity. As you'll see, we have a framework to help think this through. We're really thinking about what does it take to build a good program. And so we're going to talk about 6 of the major research-based principles that should be helpful to those of you who are here from school district, state, organization. We have a 7th principle that refers to continually doing good research, which those who are here as researchers we can ask about later on, or you could give me an email contact and we can talk a little bit about the principle for pure and better research, which we're always striving for. So we want to think new. We're going to talk about 6 different principles, and I want you to be thinking about how these principles change or affect the way you think about your own program of family and community engagement. So whether you're just starting out and haven't had much participation, or you have average kinds of programming going on, you saw in that slide that Elizabeth guided you through that we're talking about the difference between all families, most families, some families, or few families. The point being, we're going to build programs to continually grow the number of engaged parents who are able to support and encourage their children to do their best in school. That's the end result that is, in the most general terms, goal-linked. So let's take a look at these principles. There'll be 6 of them. They're color-coded here, but we're not going to take, this is too much to read. You'll have that as a record, but we're going to look at them one at a time. So the first principle that we are trying to help people think through and talk about is school, family, and community partnerships, we find, is a better term than parent involvement for organizing comprehensive, goal-linked, school-based partnership programs. In practice, this vocabulary means that parents, teachers, community partners, other staff, district leaders, and others share responsibility for student learning. By calling this a partnership, we're recognizing the shared responsibility that everyone has for children's education, for helping each youngster succeed to their very best potential. In research, this means that we must measure multiple contexts, not just one context. If we're going to study partnerships, then we're not measuring schools by themselves. We're also going to measure family conditions and community partnerships to make a much better research agenda. But for practitioners, we're really talking about shared responsibility. Everything that we do in our work tries to get this language in front of people so that they begin to talk about partnerships instead of arguing about the term parent involvement, or should we say parent engagement. Really, the term partnerships encompasses all your other favorite terms. Some people call it democratic participation or shared leadership and other kinds of terms. They're all part of partnerships, and so we don't have to spend time on arguments that don't lead anywhere about this word or that word, which often the words we use are synonyms and part of partnerships. The second principle I want to bring to your attention is that we're talking about a multi-dimensional concept. School, family, and community partnerships is not one thing. It's not, we have a good PTA at our school, therefore we're done and we have great partnerships. We have to understand the components that are separable, that have distinct activities, that pose different challenges, and that lead to different results for students, parents, and teachers, as you saw in those earlier slides. So this multidimensional nature of partnerships really is a very important part of the work we do, because it means that we can utilize these alterable variables to create a better partnership program. In practice, this means that parents and community partners can be engaged in different ways and in different locations, meaning not everything has to be at the school building. Some engagement may take place at home or in the community. In research, it means that we have to have deep and good measures of family engagement, not superficial one-item measures, if we're going to really represent a multidimensional concept. So Once we understand we're talking about partnerships, school, family, and community for student success, then we have to think about what we really mean in a framework of 6 types of involvement. Many of you may be familiar with these types of involvement. I'm just going to go through them very quickly, or we would be here all day explaining them. If you want more information about these, you'll see that in the web links, Mid-Atlantic has included our website, and you'll see some resources at the very end of the presentation where there's enormous amount of information on the 6 types, on examples of activities for each of them, on the results they produce, and so there's an enormous amount of good resources for those who want to look deeper into this framework. Type 1 is about parenting. It's not about telling parents what to do, but about helping them understand child and adolescent development. It's also a two-way connection, as are all 6 types. It's not about what parents do, it's also about what the schools do. So parenting also includes helping the schools understand their families. What are their dreams for their children? What are their expectations for success, and so on. So type 1 we call parenting to understand child and adolescent development, and for schools to understand their families. So we say step number 1, know your families. Schools that know their families will begin to build a more responsive program. Type 2, all of the schools you are in or that you work with or that you are studying, all the schools are very familiar with type 2 communicating. And this involves two-way connections, not just the school sending things home, but also families being invited and able to give suggestions, questions, comments, and other kinds of information on school programs and their children's progress. Type 3 is volunteering. We try to stretch your definition of volunteering. It's not just people who come to the school or the school organizing volunteers to help teachers in class, but it's also the organization of programs that enable parents to get engaged at home. And we like to stretch even further if you have parents who come to your school as audience for sports activities or band concerts and choral groups and drama productions. They're giving their time as volunteers, and we can count those parents as volunteers in the school. Type 3 volunteering is more diverse than many have understood in the past. Type 4 is decision-making. This decision-making is about school decisions that actually that should be type 5, but we'll see if type 4 comes up. This is really type 5 in my framework, is decisions about the school to have representation on school committees of all the groups who are in the school. So if the school serves multiple communities, representatives from the major communities, or from families with children with disabilities, or from families in gifted and talented classes might be part of committees. It's also part of the way that we organize our whole program. Under type 5 decision-making, we include our action teams for partnerships that you're going to see in a moment and to look into a little more deeply. This is type 4. We're going to have to switch these around. Learning at home is a very important type of involvement. It's the type that families want to know most about. How do I help my child do better in school this year with these teachers, given the classes and coursework that is part of my child's program this year? This is at all grade levels, and at the high school level would include course choices and earning credits. In preschool, it would include readiness, reading readiness and math readiness, social readiness activities. So it spans the grades in terms of goal-linked activities. And type 6 is collaborating with the community, which are all the resources in the community, in every community. So even those that are in poverty areas or difficult community demographics, everyone has some resources in its area that can be very helpful to children's learning, to students' experiences, to enriching school programs, and to making the school a better place. So these 6 types of involvement really are at the heart of the kinds of manipulables that people can use to make a better, stronger, more equitable, and goal-linked partnership program. Again, there's an enormous amount of information on our website about all of these.
Joyce,
Yes.
jump in for just a minute because there's a lot of questions and some pertain specifically to that list of 6 types of involvement that you just went over. So I want to make sure we get into those questions and help people understand that a little more deeply while we're right on the topic.
Sure.
Allison was asking if there are any of those 6 types that have maybe a greater impact on student achievement. So is there one of those or a few of those that seem to have more bang for the buck, per se?
Well, in a comprehensive partnership program, all 6 types are important. Some people err and call them levels. They're not levels, they're types, which means they're all important for different reasons, and they produce outcomes in different ways. You'll see down the line, I'm going to have an example of how all 6 types contribute to a school's goal to improve children's reading skills and attitudes. So if you were a reading place as a school, you would want to activate all 6 types in different designs in different ways, and sometimes in combination, in order to engage all families with their children on reading in ways that is feasible to all families. Not all families can come to workshops at the school, and therefore some things can be conducted at home that can involve just about all families. So it's not that one is more important than the other. On the other hand, learning at home, our type 4, it's 5 here, but it's 4 in all the literature that you'll see about the 6 types. That is the one that is the closest to engaging families with a child at home on school-based skills and attitudes. So when we're working on academic goals with schools that are in our network, we encourage them to make sure that type 4 activities that engage parents with their own child in learning activities at home that are designed by the teachers in a particular grade level on a particular skill or subject area, so that the youngsters are actually working with a family partner in ways that are going to make a difference to the student's success in school. Otherwise, we're really just taking time. We don't want to just take people's time. We want to make sure that the time that is engaging is actually going to be particularly helpful to the students at whatever grade level they happen to be. So keep your eye on learning at home, which you'll see later as type 4.
That's helpful. And feel free to let me know if any of these questions you want to hold on. But one that kind of spun off of what you just said is related to that piece about learning at home, and that's one of the ways you can connect without bringing the parents into the school. And Eleni was asking about communities that have some geographic diversity in that they might have families that have a difficult time getting into the school just by proximity. So
Sure.
Do you address that, or are there specific strategies that can help?
There are many strategies. You know, that's what we mean by know your families. So if you're in a rural area, for example, and and families are far from the school, that's one set of challenges. If you're in an urban area and people don't have transportation to get to the school in an easy way, that's another set of challenges. In our network, we have all kinds of these schools, and the point that you'll see in developing a program, not just looking at a particular activity, but at working at this in a sensible and incremental way, is that you begin to design ways to address the families you have rather than the families you might otherwise have in another neighborhood. So we have a book we do every year. You'll see it at the end of this whole session, called Promising Partnership Practices, where the schools in our network share their best practices with each other. And several this year. The new book will be out in about 3 weeks. It's just been finished. It's going to the printer. But several of the places we're dealing with the challenge you just mentioned, Elizabeth, which is how do we get the families who couldn't make it in an easy way to come at least to a few things at the school, while we also engage them in other ways at home. One of them had a community partner that had buses that the community partner volunteered to allow the school to use the buses to pick up the families to bring them to the school for particular important activities where the school and the partnership team wanted the most of all parents to come. Another one, in this year's book, there are many places where the teachers and the team that we have for this work, the partnership team, go out into an area in the community and have a meeting out by a housing project where many of the students live, but the parents couldn't really quite make it. And so there are all kinds of, I call them creative, wonderful designs that are explained in these books, which are available, and we can talk about that later. But for every one of these types of involvement, there really are now hundreds of good practices for different designs, for ways to activate the types of involvement for the schools and the families you serve and their children, so that it's going to work for you. That's one of the things we look at when we're judging whether some of the schools, districts, states in our network earn an award. They have to show they're using the 6-type framework, but they're making it work for them in their location, with their families, with their language groups, with their economic groups, with their whatever are their population characteristics. So those are important questions, but they're all about the design and development over time of a good program. So we're not talking about something in a can you open up and out it pops and you just do that and you're done. It's really about building this as a program, I say, the same way you build a reading program. It's never really perfect, but you keep improving over time as you learn more about the goals that have been set by the school, the students that are in the school and their families and their community resources. So it's all of a piece, and I think that you'll see more as we go on.
I think I would just want to capitalize on that comment because it answers a little bit of some of the questions I'm seeing related to this equity and addressing the diversity in our communities. And folks are asking some specifics about how do we meet the needs of families of English learners, or how do we meet the needs of families with students with disabilities. And I know you're going to get into that in some detail, but I think the overarching message is that what you're saying, the context matters in knowing your community and designing your program around the specific families that you have in your community and addressing their needs as you go, design delivery.
Yeah. So we're very clear about the implication of these 6 principles for good programs, the research-based principles. We're trying to help people understand some of the common and required elements of a good program, but at the same time, we build into how we guide our network schools and districts and states and so forth, we build in what we would call the flexible side of the program, because every place is a little different. There's not one way to do anything. As I said, there are really hundreds now of activities that fulfill these types of involvement. Many of them are listed or outlined in tabular form in our handbook. Many of them are on our website. So let's see where this goes, and then we'll come back to questions. Okay? So principle number 3 is that the program we're talking about, which I just gave a little hint to, is an essential component of good school and classroom organization. This is particularly important in the work we're trying to say, the new way of thinking about school, family, community partnerships as opposed to just an activity of family involvement that we're proud of, but that isn't really a program that's organized, systematized, and equitable. So when we think of the new way of organizing and planning a program, it's the opposite of an unplanned or random choice of what's going to happen with parents in any given year. It's part of a good system, and you'll see later on we have ways that we create a plan that's linked to your own school improvement plan, and that puts family engagement on the front burner, not a back burner, when we know that the school improvement plan has set important goals for students, and now we're going to have a linked plan that's for engaging family and community partners to support the same goals that teachers are working hard to cover in their school improvement plan. So school organization is the point here. This is not really a new idea. Way back in the 1970s, Ron Edmonds had a list of what goes into an effective school. More recently, in 2011, I think it was, Tony Brick and his team in Chicago said, here are the components of a really effective school organization. They all name family and community engagement as part of an effective school or part of school reform. The problem has been that people have put this on a back burner. Well, we'll work on this when we get around to it. Thinking that curricular change or new assessments have to be done first and by themselves, and not realizing that family and community engagement is part of the work that gets done to have a good curriculum, to have responsive assessments, and that the family and community roles for encouraging children help more of them do better in school. So this is a very important component and a very important principle. In our studies, we found that for this principle, we have identified 8 essential elements for how we make this become part of good school organization. These are not unlike other school reform components, but we do have studies that show that when we have leadership that supports partnerships, teamwork about partnerships, action plans of scheduled partnership activities, the implementation of those plans, the evaluation of how well an activity went or how we've been doing overall for the year, the adequate funding for what we plan and how we implement it, that it's part of an official kind of budget, that we build collegial support in our school districts, in our communities, with our families, and networking, that we're aware that we're actively sharing good work so that we help everybody see the scope that we really can meet when we work at planning these programs well. These are essential elements, and these are the required elements when we're working with a school district, state, or organization. But as I said before, within each and every one of them, there is flexibility for customized design because we could have a school or a district in a very affluent area, which we do have in our network, and we have schools in the most poverty-stricken area. They still can activate these structures and these processes so that they have an effective program, but they must be able to customize what they do and how they do it so that their families can actually participate. That's a tricky mix, but I believe it's a very important mix in a good partnership program. We're going to look a little deeper into number 2 here, teamwork, because it is so essential, and it is part of how we guide the schools, all the schools that we work with, and how we guide the district leaders in those schools to understand that they don't have to do all of this work alone in all of their schools, that teamwork is essential. I also want to point out number 5, evaluation, which has been missing from programs of partnership, but that is part of the service we provide to any school, district, or state we work with. So we can talk a little bit about those 2 in particular, or any others down the line that you have questions about. These are 3 of our award winners. We had actually many. We just finished our awards program. These are schools at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. And they're teams that show that they put together a group, a committee, that's going to be about building partnerships in their school. What does that mean? It means reaching out to all the other parents who aren't on the team. These are teachers, parents, administrators, community partners, and at the high school level, they include students as part of our kind of required team effort. But you can see they have different numbers of people, and if you could get close in on their faces, you'd see they're all happy. They've all won awards from the National Network for understanding that they could take the 6 types and those 8 elements and make it work for them. Del May is a southern kind of rural community. Park Middle School is in Kennewick, Washington, which is a urbanized or suburban urban community. And Walcott Technical High School is a very interesting location that serves many regions around their area as a technical high school in Connecticut. So they're all showing they can use the 6 types, they can activate the 8 elements, and do it in a way that matches their own school population of students and parents. The job of the team is to represent family, school, community partnerships. So we ask that at least 2 or 3 teachers, 2 or 3 parents, the principal is on the team. Many places, you could see from the numbers that I showed you here, they've added many more than the minimum. And at the high school level, 1 or 2 students are on the team. The team must speak partnership. Someone can't say, well, we'll have a team, but it can only be teachers. That does not speak partnership. So the notion in these award-winning sites is we look to see, do they have a representation, even if they grow their programs as they customize their work to match their needs, even if they've added many more than the minimum number of team members. But the team is about partnerships by partners. What does the team do? Very simple, 4 little things in a way. They are going to link their program in a planful way to the school improvement plan. So they review the school goals in the school improvement plan. They choose 2 academic goals, 1 non-academic goal, and 1 goal for a good climate. Those are going to be the pages of their plan, as you'll see in a little bit. They're going to write a 1-year action plan that includes family and community engagement for the goals they've chosen. Now, in most school improvement plans, they have many, many more than 2 academic, 1 non-academic, and a goal for climate. But we've learned that the team can really work on 4 things well in a given year, most teams. As they get more experience, they may decide to add some other activities or goals or issues. Their job is to implement what they plan, and you see the big important question is to evaluate their progress, and we know that that's been that missing link. So our handbook helps people to do that work, and then our own work from the center is we will help every site evaluate their progress at the end of each school year. That's an interesting service that we provide because we learn from it also. And then the most important one, look down at that fourth bullet, continually improve. This is not a magic show. It is a program development activity. So we continually improve from year to year. We improve our plans, we improve our practices, and then we have a much better program. So that is a short summary of teamwork. Let's move on to principle number 4. And this is really the crux of our goal-linked emphasis. Programs of school, family, and community partnerships must focus on student learning and development. This principle, the general statement up here, is really a counterbalance to some of the old way of thinking that when we talk about parent involvement, we are talking about the parents. But the work that we do on school, family, and community partnerships is really about the students. So our programs, even if we do measure, are more families engaged, and we want to measure that. Are families satisfied with the school? Yes, we want to measure that. But really, the ultimate outcome is student learning and development. That means not just achievement test scores, but also their attitudes about learning, their attendance or their health or their post-secondary planning at the upper levels. It could mean their enrichment, talent development in art, music, and other talents. We're going to focus in Principle 4 to make sure that our one-year action plan for partnerships that the action team must write and link to the school improvement plan is about student learning on pages 1, 2, and 3 of the plan. Page 4 of the plan is to improve the school climate, because you can't ask parents to get engaged in reading and math and science and behavior or post-secondary planning if it's not a very welcoming place. So again, we have a dual kind of emphasis on student outcomes, but also improving the school climate. This is how our structure for what we've just been talking about actually works, and that is that most schools these days have a school improvement team that is going to write or approve a school improvement plan. And then you see the arrow because the action team is going to draw from that plan to create its one-year action plan for family and community partnerships that are linked to the 2 academic, 1 non-academic, and goal for good partnerships. And then here you see how that works, that this school has chosen reading and math as its academic goals, and they're going to draw, the team is going to draw from the 6 types of involvement for each of those academic goals. This school happened to choose health, improving student health, nutrition, exercise as their behavioral goal. Other schools might choose attendance or good discipline, and they're going to draw from the 6 types of involvement for how they're going to engage the families and the community to support that goal the same way the teachers are working hard in the school improvement plan on these very goals. Then the 4th page of the plan is the goal for a welcoming climate. And again, all schools really do many of these things already. They may actually have open house nights and parent-teacher conferences. So they're working on climate, and they may want to improve their outreach so that it is more equitable or more effective. But in the meantime, they're also going to begin to engage parents on goal-linked school goals for student success as part of the other pages of the plan. So this structure is a relatively simple one. We try to keep all of this story simple and clear so that people actually can, A, do it, do the required structures and processes, and be creative about customizing the work for their own location. Here's an example, as I promised earlier, of how do you use the 6 types as you write a one-year action plan for the page that might address reading. So this is a school working on reading. They're going to think of what they're putting in their one-year action plan as a team, and they've chosen to have workshops for the youngest children, kindergarten and preschool and kindergarten, on how parents can read aloud, excuse me, with young children. They are conducting parent-teacher-student conferences on reading goals and reading progress. They have some reading volunteers, guest readers, authors coming in to talk about reading, and reading buddies to help children who need some extra attention. They use reading interactive homework to read aloud with a family partner and to show the links between reading and writing. In this school, this was a PTO, but they were using their family center or parent room to provide information on reading, to conduct book swaps, and to sponsor a variety of reading activities. So they weren't just holding PTA meetings, they were actually supporting the goals in the one-year action plan for partnerships. And then this school had donations from business partners of books for classrooms, for the school library, and for the children to take home to their own home library. These are 6 ways that this school happened to activate that framework of the 6 types of involvement, and they focused on reading on that first page of their one-year action plan. You could see that another school might pick other or different activities as they understand the 6 types, as they gather samples and examples that are in our books and on the website or in other materials they read. PTO Today is a useful publication that often talks about these 6 types in very other different ways. So there's many ways that this school, which was an elementary school, was going to say, we're a reading place. Our teachers are working with children on reading, and we're going to engage families in reading. And we're going to do it this year in these ways according to our one-year action plan, which actually schedules how and when these activities would occur. So, having talked a little bit about those 4 of the 6 principles, we're going to come back to the others, but I want to know how much you understand, like the questioner earlier in Elizabeth's comments earlier that someone asked about goal-linked activities. Here are the examples of these goal-linked activities. So first we saw the goal-linked activities show up in the action plan on these 4 pages, and then we said, well, here's an example in reading of how a school used the goal of reading to link family engagement and community partnerships about reading with children. So I'm going to turn this over to Elizabeth to see if you really get it. Do you understand what we're talking about when we say goal-linked activities? And maybe we could prompt some of you to think about math or science, or think about art or music, or think about attendance as a goal for one of the behavioral activities. Elizabeth, maybe you could lead this group in the next poll.
Absolutely. So I was just going to comment that there are so many great ideas floating around in the parking lot, a lot of sharing of thoughts, but also a lot of questions. We see your questions, and we'll make sure that we address as many as we can today. We do have this question for you all to think about, given what you've heard and given the context of your community and your school, what are some goal-linked activities that you may be using or that you can think of to use that would help to engage parents and community partners with their students on specific skills and attitudes related to a subject or a particular goal, as Joyce has described. So that's our question for you. We're going to put that poll up. It's an open-ended question, so you can type out your response. And as you think about that and begin to type, we're going to talk a little bit through some of the questions that I'm seeing. One of the housekeeping questions that always comes up in our webinars is the use of these resources, the use of the PowerPoint, and sharing this with others in your communities and wanting to give this information to others. You may absolutely get the PDF version of the PowerPoint, which, as I mentioned, is at the bottom of your screen, and share that with others. You will also receive, as an attendee of today's webinar, an email following the webinar giving you information about the archive. So you will have access to the link that takes you to this actual webinar with the audio and all of the polls and all of the great information that has been happening live. So you can look out for that and then forward that on to others if you think it would be of interest. And in addition to that, if you want to check out all of our other resources, those will be posted at the REL Mid-Atlantic website, which is also down at the bottom of your screen and available for you to look at. That's our housekeeping items. We also have had some questions, and this is kind of recurring. I think maybe you're going to want to wait to answer it, Joyce, but I'm going to raise it because it's been asked several times, related to funding. So in a general sense, people are curious about what are the best sources for funding these types of programs that you're describing, and how do you ensure your funding is prioritized so that this becomes a goal, a system-wide goal over time, and not simply something that is grant funded for a period of time and then goes away, or something that there are not dedicated staff or partners to be working through this family engagement.
So do you want to talk about funding while people are still thinking about goal-linked, or do you want to move on?
I think maybe we just hold on that for now, but I want to make sure people know that we heard that question and we will address it.
I see some names of friends who are members of our network. That's nice to see. I'm glad you're here, and you'll be able to actually share how you do these things. I see some award winners' names as well. You could be very helpful in terms of letting people know how you activate all of these research-based approaches, because you're not only doing it, but you're doing it really well. And so I'm happy to see some familiar names among the nearly 200 that are part of your attendee list, which is really very exciting. We'd like all 200 to be able to do this work really well, and we can help them if they wish. So in addition, in the resource section, you can check out the NNPS website too. So shall we? So I see a lot of short answers of activities that do link to goals. So when someone does a family math night, reading night, science night, and fitness night, and other kinds of meetings at the school that are about a particular subject area or set of topics that children are learning and that are part of the school improvement plan, we've seen over the years of our network that those who really work at building these kinds of programs get better and better at two important parts of those family nights. One is to take the challenge that we set for all the schools in our network or not in our network, that if you're doing a meeting or an activity like a family night at the school building, that you take the challenge of how will you get the information to those families who could not come. I always joke with audiences that I couldn't go to my son's workshops all the time because I was out and about talking about parent involvement. And that you can't go to your children's workshops if you're in school helping other people's children. So we set a general challenge for meetings and workshops and family nights at school. How do you get the information to those who could not come? Some of our schools are using their varied technologies to get that information out. Some, for example, we've had several schools in NNPS, in the network, who do math nights, and they have little plastic bags that have all the instructions and all the games that were linked to their state standards in math, and they give them out at the family night. Excuse me. And then they give them out the next day, and the children who couldn't come to the family night can take that home to do with their families at home, even though they couldn't come. This is a really important new direction for these programs, to understand that not everyone can come to every meeting that's held at the school, and we want to get beyond bodies in the building as the way that we measure or understand school, family, and community partnerships. Some schools are using their streaming video services or their other major technologies to have families attend workshops or see important activities anytime they like. And then others have other ways, low-tech ways of getting this information in summary form or in sending home handouts from workshops, meetings, or family nights. There are all kinds of ways that the goal-linked nature of these can be shared with those who couldn't come. So, Elizabeth, I think we should move on to the next principles. Can we do that?
Yes. While we pull that poll off, I do want to answer one question also related to the comment here. What we can do is provide that list of responses in an archive, and we'll also post that to the REL Mid-Atlantic site, so you can look out for that in a few days. You should see that posted there. So I know folks are learning a lot from the sharing that's going on.
That's great. Okay, so we have principle number 5 among the 6 principles we're going to talk about today. This is very important given the attendees who signed in at the start of this webinar. Programs of school, family, and community partnerships require multi-level leadership. So what we've learned over these 20 years that we are a network and growing is that states, districts, and schools, and I'm going to add organizations and also universities, have important roles to play in whether these programs of school, family, community partnerships are permanent and systematized, are sustainable. And that also links to some of the questions that you just raised, Elizabeth, is we don't want this to be just a 2-year project and then it disappears. We want this to be part of school organization. That's where that 3rd principle comes in and is so important. So that was a very good question, because we are talking about sustainable programs in schools and at the district level, so that these are growing and part of the way that schools operate. What we've learned in the last, 5 years of our own studies is that when districts have a leader for partnerships, a named leader who's going to be that district's expert on partnerships, that those schools in the districts with these leaders do better than places where the school are trying to do this work alone. Now, schools can build partnership programs by themselves, particularly if they have strong principal support and if they have a good team that's going to be growing and sustainable itself. But what we've learned with over 400 schools and many districts with new methods of study, new methods of research, is that when we have nested leadership, as I might call it, where districts are working with their schools, the district leader has support of the superintendent and is working with the schools, sometimes all schools in the district. When that kind of structure of leadership and support is present, the schools do better, reach out to more families, reach out to more and different families who have some difficult challenges than when schools try to do this work on their own. This is very important to us because we like the structure of district leaders and their schools. Then we can see that this becomes part of the district culture of partnerships, that every school can have a team, because when the schools build these programs, as we've been outlining them, the schools begin to learn from each other. And it turns out the district leaders are teaching some things to the schools, but the schools, because of their different demographics and decisions about their programs, the schools are actually teaching some things to the district leader too. And that is really something that we like to see. In addition, we learn from both sets of actors at the school and district level of things that we can either address in new research studies or with new materials to help everybody do a little better job. When we say districts, in some locations, organizations have been acting like a district to help sets of schools and sets of districts as well that are in their location or in their special projects. And we've also tried to encourage universities to add this topic to their syllabi for future teachers, to prepare future teachers, future principals, future counselors, and others to understand partnerships even before they are placed in their professional positions. Now, the interesting fact there is that you could have the best course at the college or university level, which is really important because it sets people up for understanding what we mean in these new directions for good partnerships. But you still will need the kind of in-service professional development that our network provides to the districts, to the schools, to organizations and states, because each location is going to be a little different, and they have to really understand how to organize their programs for their particular location. So it's, again, we're not talking about a magic trick that just makes everything perfect by wishing this happens. It really is something that multi-level leaders work at in order to sustain good partnership programs. At the district and organization level, we call what we're talking about a double arrow. You can see the two arrows here. There are some things that district level leaders, even named leaders for partnerships, do that is about their office, their work, and their leadership at the district level or in their organization about partnerships, about family and community engagement. What our network tries to encourage and to help people to add to that one arrow is the second arrow, to learn how to facilitate all school-based action teams for partnerships, whether you're a district with one school or whether you're a district with several hundred schools, both of which are part of our network. So if you just do the first arrow of conducting your office well, you may be a great leader for partnerships, but your schools will not know how the superintendent expects everybody to be reaching out to all families in goal-linked ways. That takes a double arrow for district and organization leaders to make a really good partnership program that is part of district culture and part of each school. We really have to emphasize that because parents and students are at the school level. They're in the schools, and that's where their affiliation and their allegiance tends to be. They are more likely to go to a meeting at the school than in the district office. So we want each school to have this capacity to really work with its students' families. Here's an example of two of our many excellent district leaders or organization leaders who have earned awards over the years. One is in Missouri, a district leader that just one of their schools this year earned an award for its work on partnerships. And our other little group here is a powerful team of four. They're an organization in Cleveland that works only with preschools. And they've done a remarkable job of having, I think it's over 40 preschools. They all have teams, they all write plans, they use the 6 types of engagement, and they're working to help preschool children get ready for a successful transition to kindergarten. So this can work at all levels in districts and in organizations in ways that matter for children, which is what we're trying to develop. Finally, the 6th principle that we want to talk about this afternoon is critical. All programs of school, family, community partnerships are about equity. Equity is a strengths model. It stands opposite what some people know as a deficit model, where you're pointing fingers at people who cannot become involved, or we're criticizing parents who are not involved, and we say, well, they aren't interested and they don't have goals for their children, et cetera, et cetera. Our data show that those deficit expectations or characterizations are just not true. Once we really set a partnership program in place, and we are about reaching all families, even those in difficult situations, or whose children have special needs, or who every child has some special needs, but the notion is every family has some strengths and can encourage their own child to do their very best in school, then we're talking about a strengths model, not a deficit model. And we're talking about finding solutions to inequalities rather than just labeling some as involved and others as not involved. So we're not trying to point out the inequalities. In the work of NNPS, we're trying to solve the inequalities and turning them into greater equality. This is really underlying all the other principles that we have been talking about. So those are the 6 principles that we hope you will be interested in and want to put in place in the schools and in the other districts or states, or however your leadership really characterizes your work. To be very explicit about school work, because everything has to come back to the school level where the children and the parents are. We say, well, the way that we can see that the 6 principles can be activated is if you have in each school an action team for partnerships that writes a 1-year action plan, using the framework of 6 types of involvement, budgeting for those activities that are in the plan, having time for team meetings so they can actually become a team and be an effective team to reach out to all families, to evaluate and improve the outreach and results every year, which has been a missing link in the history of family engagement, and have state, district, and organizations who work with schools to make sure this all gets done well, people can share their best practices and learn from each other. And that's the networking element that we talked about in the 8 elements. We want to have good leadership and networking. So these few bullets that really are, that much will be happening in each and every school with good leadership then, really is the key to effective programs. This is not difficult. We have over 600 schools at the moment that all have these things in place, or they're working toward them. And it isn't something that just happens or that it has to be perfect before one gets started. It really is an agenda for school improvement. So the 6 principles can be implemented by any school that really wants to systematize its plans and practices. And with these structures, it is possible over time to reach all families in ways that support greater student success in school. We've just talked together for a little over an hour, and we've talked about all of these topics. So this is a little reflective activity, but I want you to know that we've just had a little mini course where we've talked about, let's look at these colored boxes, because I'm going to ask Elizabeth to give you a little reflective moment. We've talked about the overlapping spheres of influence of homeschool and community, that we want a definition of school, family, and community partnerships that recognizes the shared responsibility of all the partners in children's education, that in a good program at the school level, we'll have an action team for partnerships that uses the framework of 6 types, writes a plan out that schedules activities to reach all families in ways that link to school improvement goals, that we're going to be working on equity to engage all families, not just the easiest to reach, and in order to produce better results for more students. This can happen at all grade levels, preschool, elementary, middle, and high, that we add the process of evaluation to make sure we improve our programs from year to year. We're building district level and multi-level leadership so that schools know someone cares about how their program works and how it improves from year to year, and that we're going to learn from each other. If we network within our districts, if we network across districts within a state, if we network with our national network so that we can learn together, then 3, 6, 9, 12 new directions for family engagement programs have been our topic this afternoon in a very short order. So yes, we've just touched upon them, but we can address how you heard information about these topics in the last hour or so. So I'm going to turn this now to Elizabeth, who's going to find out what you think about all that we covered in this short period of time.
Wonderful. Well, yeah, that was a very brief summary of all of the meat of what you've been able to share with us in the last hour or so. And I know folks are getting a lot out of that, and we're interested in some more of this sharing and finding out from each of you which one of the new directions for partnership program development has really resonated the most with you and you think is the most important for helping to improve the program that you're currently working with for family and community engagement, and tell us a little bit about why. So I'm going to actually move back to the prior slides so that you can see those different topics that we've addressed, and you'll see another open-ended poll box come up, and we'd like you to just share really which is the direction that you feel most compelled to go in from what you've heard here today. And again, while you're typing, we do have some questions, so I think we'll take some time to address those here. There was an interesting question, and I know you already mentioned this at the beginning, but because some folks joined a little bit later than others, Joyce, there was a question about this differentiation between the terminology, partnerships, involvement, engagement. Can you touch on that again in the note you made about the terminology?
Sure. So we call our handbook, for example, is titled School, Family, and Community Partnerships, Your Handbook for Action. And the reason we use the term school, family, and community partnerships is because it recognizes the importance of understanding this work as a shared responsibility of the schools, the home, and the community. In the old days, when we called it parent involvement, even parent engagement a bit, we were putting all of this work that we just talked for an hour or more about, we were putting it on the parents' shoulders. We were saying, good parents get involved, why don't you? What we have in our new direction in terms of shared responsibility is the school has some roles to play, families have roles to play, and the community has roles to play as partners in children's education. And we like the term school, family, community partnerships, which talks the right talk in order that we can walk the walk, so that we're recognizing everyone's part, and we're not putting it on anyone's shoulder alone. So the schools that build their programs in the ways that we have been talking about today, with the 8 essential elements of good program development, reach out to all families. They don't just yell at parents and say you should be involved or criticize parents who are not involved. Rather, they build a partnership program with a plan for action that's going to reach out to the families and build a partnership culture so that children know that all of the important people in their lives are part of the emphasis on education, staying in school, graduating from high school on time. Everyone is really interested in their success. And so does that happen overnight? If you go back to the first poll we did today, and some people were at an average level and some parents are involved, does it make all parents involved tomorrow? No. We have to build our abilities and our capacities to do this work really well. But we like that term because it encompasses the other favorite terms of parent involvement. Yes, that's part of partnership. Shared leadership. Yes, that's part of partnership. Parent engagement. Yeah, that's part of partnership. Community involvement, part of partnership. And so we use all the terms. In fact, in a lot of the things we write, we would use all those terms sometimes on the same page or in the same paragraph so that our writing is not boring. But overall, we really like that term as partnership, so we understand we're talking about partners. Our textbook for teacher coursework or coursework within the college level is called the same first name we say, School, Family, and Community Partnerships. And the end of that title is Preparing Educators and Improving Schools. Again, we don't want the young teacher, the future teachers who are coming into your classrooms at the college level to build on their old ideas about parent involvement, that this should happen. We want them to build on the new ideas that they, as professionals, are expected to have a component of good school organization about family and community engagement. That's how we think about that term.
I think that's a helpful segue into a question that Wendy has on the parking lot related to teacher support. So you're suggesting, Joyce, that this needs to start at the preparation level. So as folks are preparing to become educators or administrators, that we incorporate a lot of these principles and guidance about how to best structure family programs in our schools into those preparation programs so that folks come in with the skills and the understanding started at least.
Yes, and we said that that's true, but we don't rely on that alone because in our schools and districts today are hundreds of thousands of teachers and principals and educators and counselors and others in the schools as practicing educators. And so we have an in-service side to this topic and a pre-service side because we don't want the schools that are in existence right now to wait to have a whole new set of professionals coming out of the colleges, besides of which they would need in-service preparation to tailor what they've learned in general about partnerships to the specific community in which they have their placements. So there's two sides to the story: in-service education that becomes possible right now with any school, any district, any state that thought what we talked about today is important. We actually have a conference in November that all of your attendees may want to attend, which is how do you get ready to do this and you leave that conference prepared to go back home and start this right away. So we're not waiting for next generation of educators. We are ready to move as all the members of our network to do this work well, to build that expertise right in your own offices, and let's see what we can learn together.
That's great. As we look at the responses there to the poll, I see some themes in what folks are really finding to be the most useful or information that they've really found informational today. Related to leadership, we talked a lot about that. The piece on equity, developing action plans, and one that I have one outstanding question. Folks are saying the evaluation piece is helpful in thinking about and improving in their programs. But can you talk a little bit more about this? We had a question earlier from Sam, and I want to make sure it gets addressed. He was asking how we evaluate the efficacy of school and family and community partnerships in ways that don't necessarily look at student achievement. So you talked about how your group can do this as a service, but are there other things that you would want to mention that are good ways to measure the efficacy of a program?
Sure. So, so just starting with your last comment, yes, for those schools, districts, states that join our network, we send a questionnaire every year at the end of the year about the structures, these 8 essential elements, so that we can see in a national picture what's happening out there. We don't expect everyone to be at an excellent level. It's something that you grow into. In our handbook, Chapter 9 is on evaluation, and it points out in a chart all of the possible evaluations that you can do for partnership programs, from the simplest, no-cost evaluations that most schools already do right now, for example, an exit evaluation that parents fill out after they attend a particular event. There's nothing wrong with that. It costs very little, and everyone should have a say in what they just experienced. That's the simplest kind of evaluation that we can do. At the other end of the continuum are costly longitudinal research studies of processes or outcomes that very few individual schools or even individual districts can do. Some of our states have had independent evaluations of their work, and of course grants that we might have allowed us to study the end results of work, but those have to be well-designed research studies. The people who are attending, who they signed in as researchers, know there are certain kinds of studies that are less costly and other kinds of studies that are more costly. So that chart in Chapter 9 in our handbook and the rest of that chapter actually talk about the variety and the range or the scope of different kinds of evaluations that are not about student outcomes, that are about quality of program. And that's the piece that really has been missing all these many years. And so we really are trying to help people think through what they can do, what they can afford to do the best job that they can afford to do, because some things are beyond reach, and that doesn't mean that you can't evaluate anything. That should be helpful to people, and I'm going to show you now, I hope. We can just move a little bit and you can see those resources that we do have available. Shall we do that and come back to questions, Elizabeth?
That's perfect. Yep, we want to capitalize on the remaining 15 minutes we have, and I know there's questions that people still would like to have answered, so we'll do our best to get to all of those.
Okay, so proceeding from here, I did want to let you know about the National Network of Partnership Schools in case you are interested in moving forward in your own leadership, that you want research-based tools, that we do try to offer ongoing technical assistance. We call it on-call consulting with our facilitators by phone, email, monthly e-briefs. Our website is really chock full of good information, newsletters, and so on. Coordinated planning and evaluation tools so that you meet the Title I requirements for family engagement, and the networking opportunities like sharing your best practices, learning from others, and getting a spotlight from the National Network if you earn an award for applying all these principles and making it your own. We love to spotlight sites that do things really well. It teaches others how they can do the same. Here are a few of the this is the old version of this particular slide, but it's okay. We have several books that are obtainable from the publisher. I want to point out the fourth one over, the sort of chartreuse-looking one, the light yellow-green color. That's the network's handbook, and when you join the network, we give you one. It also has a disc in the back cover that has all of our training materials right on it. Some of you might also be interested in the second one over, Multicultural Partnerships, How to Engage Parents Who Are Diverse in Background. This is about racial, ethnic, linguistic backgrounds. And then over on the very far right, Family Reading Nights. That's a second edition book that helps people organize good family reading nights by genre, meaning you can have a biography night or a poetry night or a history night or a jokes night and do a good job of organizing the family night. And then we have also some publications that are available from our own center. The books of Promising Partnership Practices. 3 weeks, this one will say 2015. Over the years, we have we started these books in 1998. There's over 1,200 great ideas, and we just changed our website, so they're not all available now, but members will have access to all years of books of Promising Partnership Practices. You, whether you're a member or not, can go right into the whole book of 2014, and in 3 weeks you'll be able to go into the whole book of 2015, whether you're a member or not. So it's a very helpful resource of lots of great activities from the sites that we're working with. The middle one is a kind of, if you don't want to look at 1,200 activities, my staff has created 12-page brochures on each of the outcomes that is listed there of good ideas, 10 each, on family engagement in reading, math, science, writing, and so on. And then we have a homework process we didn't talk about today, which is how teachers design homework that requires children to talk to someone at home about something interesting they're learning in class. We call that TIPS, Teachers Involve Parents in Schoolwork, because the parents do not have to come into the school building to do that with their youngsters, and they do not have to teach these subjects. The children are the ones who show, share, and demonstrate the skills they're learning in class. These are all on our website, which you can look at, access, and get copies of, whether you're a member or not. We can't make anybody a member, but some people like to have that extra help. So to synthesize, before we move on to final questions and Elizabeth's end comments, what did we talk about today? One, many studies confirm this is an important topic that can have positive impact on student performance, well-being, on their development. Research shows overwhelmingly in good studies with good methods that there are positive results of partnerships on students. The goal then is to, bullet number 2, is to have an important, permanent, sustainable program that's part of school organization so that families are engaged in ways that link to student learning and development, so that the time that we ask parents to become involved, the outreach to get more and different parents involved, is going to have some positive payoff for student success. And then finally, that there are action steps that you can take right now, tomorrow, to really start to build these programs so that they are equitable and sustainable and really effective, so that we have an action team with a plan that's going to be in place to keep working in a good way at engaging parents so that it matters. And that, I think, is a good summary of all that we talked about in this short mini course, as I might call it, this afternoon. So now, Elizabeth, I'm going to turn this back to you to close things out.
Sure thing. Yes, I feel like we still have a lot to cover because we have so many questions I want to make sure we get to. I'm going to mention to folks that in addition to the other resources that you've seen today, you will see a Q&A document posted to the REL Mid-Atlantic site in the next few days that will summarize the questions and the responses that have been asked here today. And so if there are questions that we haven't gotten to, we will do our best to talk with Joyce and get the answers to those questions and post them to that document. So with that said, I'd rather take the next 5 to 7 minutes or so and address some of the questions than focus on our takeaways question that we have for you, because we've already talked in some general terms about what you all gathered from today's webinar. I think the time is best spent answering your questions. So one being this piece about funding, and I already talked about this early on, but Joyce, can you talk to us and talk to the participants about the funding sources and priorities and how they make this something that they can carry on in their schools and districts and organizations over time?
Sure. And also, Elizabeth, I would add to your comments about questions that if somebody really has a serious question that we haven't touched about, the next slide will show our email address, and I'm very happy to answer all questions. Our center's rule is answer all email. It may take a couple of days, but we will answer any questions that come in directly to me. So on the funding issue, we collect data every year from every site of how much does their program cost on average, per pupil kind of expenditure, and what are their funding sources. By far, over the last 20 years that we are a network, the #1 source of funds for these programs is Title I. Some use other titles like professional development or the ELL title, or homeless, the program that supports homeless students. Many of the title programs and other funded programs, either from the federal government or state funding programs, have family engagement as a nominal goal. And those programs often do offer funds that can be used to support the activities that an action team for partnerships puts into their plan. Some of those activities have some costs involved. Others are not costly at all, and others, many of our partners' sites make friends with their business partners or other community resources that provide in-kind support to the planned activities within their programs. We also have some state and organization and district leaders who, if the school has a good written plan and puts in a little proposal for extra funds, finds a way to fund something that is in the plan. That's a much better way of spending discretionary funds or extra dollars than just giving away money. We like to see the district leaders or organization state leaders understand that if a school has a team and the team has a plan and they can write a short proposal about what they need some extra funds for and then report what happened because they received the funds for what they said they wanted to work on, that helps others learn about that. That's better than just giving out money for any old thing. So again, the structure of this work is very important. Title I says, at least in the earlier version, I haven't seen the reauthorized version, but I'm assuming it's the same, that in Section 1118, it may change its number on family engagement. It says you may use an organization to help you with this work. And many of the sites in our network use Title I funds to join our network or to come to a conference or to get the professional development they need to have the capacity to help their schools engage their families in goal-linked ways. So the most common funding is Title I, followed by other funding, followed by district funds, followed by principals' budgets, and so on. So the chart and list of funding sources also is included in our handbook to give people an idea of what those sources of funds and costs are. I think it's Chapter 7 on state and district leadership. There is a table in there that reports this that you can look into.
That's a good segue into one other question. I think this might need to be our last one, but there were a few questions around this same topic of collaborating and bringing into this conversation other community organizations. So not confining this conversation only to schools, but thinking about other groups in our communities that can operate under the same principles or that can best support and collaborate the efforts of the schools. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So many of our school sites and district sites, either in their district advisory committees or on the school action team for partnerships, will have a variety of community partners in addition to those kind of decision-making committee links to the community. Many schools have unique and creative ways that they reach out to community partners, not just business partners, but faith-based organizations, senior citizen groups, local universities, local shopkeepers and businesses, in terms of supporting a particular activity and making them aware and thanking them officially and publicly for their support. One good way to see this and to see the range of community partners is if you go to our website and open the last book of Promising Partnership Practices, which you have access to. Look under Type 6. Type 6 is collaborating with the community. And we are really delighted and inspired by the different ways that the various schools at different levels utilize community partners, whether it's at the preschool level of getting great picture books for families to have at home, or whether it's at the high school level, having 40, 50 community partners come in for a career fair that helps the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade students explore careers that they may be interested in. The range is enormous, and the creativity is fantastic. So there's no end to how to do that. Where you want to make sure you start, to make sure this is all adds up to something, is to have that action team and action plan so that we're not just doing an interesting activity once, but we're really planning a set of activities to reach a particular school goal, and we're going to evaluate how well all of that went. Then we're not just doing any old thing, we're doing something important.
Wow, I know we could continue the conversation for a lot longer, but we promised folks we'll wrap up at 5 o'clock Eastern, so here we are. I want to do a few housekeeping things here. As Joyce had already mentioned, please reach out to her if you have any content-specific questions. Her email address is on the screen. She shared a wealth of resources. On the next slide, you should see her, it's not there. There is her website for the partnershipschools.org. You can find all of the resources there. And if you have general questions about the series, please reach out to me or our REL Mid-Atlantic staff. We hope you'll join us next month for our topic on differentiated instruction with Dr. Carol Tomlinson. It promises to be another exciting session. And we do value your input, so we hope that you'll take a few minutes to complete our survey. That gives us valuable information about how we can improve, what you liked about today's session, and what can keep you coming back. So at this time, I would really like to give a virtual round of applause to Joyce, thanking her for her expertise in sharing today. It's been wonderful, and we really appreciate it, Joyce, so thank you.
I'm really thankful for everyone for attending and for being so participatory. I'm eager to read all of your comments and to hear other questions you might have. And I do hope that some of you will decide to really take action. We would love to see that.
Great, and we hope you all have a great afternoon and evening, and we hope to see you again next month.